In my youth, I was an informal person, like probably many others. Piercings, shoulder-length hair, all that stuff. The world around me was irritating with its grayness. Grey houses, grey skies, grey people around me. I was drawn to something else, but I could not understand what. People like me gathered in packs, and crowded on the boulevards and in the wells of houses. They smoked cigarettes, not always filled with tobacco. They drank cheap beer from eggplants and port wine, free sevens, sometimes grape day. I still can't imagine worse swill than this, but even that was better than spending evenings at home, catching the disapproving lenses of my parents. They had achieved nothing, but at the same time, they wanted me to follow in their footsteps. The drink worked wonders. It was worth taking a few sips, and the people around you became closer. They were very different. Rockers, metalheads, skinheads, even goths. But they all had one thing in common: a stubborn unwillingness to become part of the adult world. We drank what someone had with them, then went for more. Then the money ran out, and we went asking. The owners of the 24-hour bars knew us by sight for a long time, and sold drinks even at night, without fear of being set up. They knew that there was no point in us turning them in. After all, tomorrow we would need a new portion. Time passed unnoticed. People who graduated from college, found jobs, or got into serious relationships left the company. We remembered them with contempt and a hint of envy. Little by little, only the most inveterate old men remained, and the youth looked at us as if we were crazy dinosaurs. It was shameful to sit on our parents' necks, so my friend and I organized a folk group. We removed our piercings, sewed clothes in a quasi-folk style, got Slavic jewelry from reenactors that we knew. We played different things: dance songs, ballads, just folk songs. Everything we could dig up and put to music. We were given change, by skinheads who loved native stuff, and girls who loved to dance, and passers-by who were interested in gawking, not at the next metalheads, but at the especially rare crazy ones, in embroidered shirts and with culverats around their necks. When there were days when the crowd gathered, we played on the boulevard. At other times, just in crowded places where there were understanding cops. That day, we were playing in the underpass. It was getting late, and we had enough money for a couple of bottles of vodka. We decided to play for another hour and a half, and then rush off to a party with some friends. They could at least feed us there. I was in a bad mood. I had recently broken up with my girlfriend. She was from too respectable a family. She wanted me to give up my marginal lifestyle and find a normal job. Deep down, I knew she was right, but I still could not allow myself to be driven under the thumb, as they used to say in our company. We had parted badly. I probably loved her after all, and that's why I still wore her gift, a small earring. My friends laughed at me, but not for long. The earring was usually not visible under my hair anyway. We were finishing another Black Raven, which a tipsy middle manager had ordered for 50 kopecks, when two people approached us. They looked like small businessmen or successful racketeers of that time. Sheepskin coats, although the weather was still warm. Gold jewelry, patent leather shoes, pungent cologne. As soon as Black Raven ended, they applauded. They threw a pile of crumpled dollar bills into our hats, and, without leaving the cash register, they offered to take us for a ride, like, friends are having a wedding outside the city. They have everything, but live music, and even native Russian music is missing. We looked at each other. We had worked with such a crowd. Sometimes a rich daddy wanted to please his idiot offspring. Sometimes he himself was just an idiot, but grown up and successful. In addition, along with the explosion of private enterprise, such celebrations in the merchant style were gaining momentum, with pies, mead, and prostitutes dressed as boyars. Of course, we didn't really like such a crowd. Yesterday's serfs. Now they looked with disdain at the rest, who remained in their eyes the poor and the lower class. But they usually paid well, weren't very demanding about quality, and we were always short of money. We agreed. Somehow, we fit into our escort's brand new Mercedes, just out of the showroom. We drove for 2.5 hours on the highway, and then shook along the off-road. We managed to fall asleep, which was helped by a bottle of cognac that we were given, for the voice. We woke up already on the way to the banquet site. What can I say? Our clients partied in style. They rented what seemed like a whole country boarding house, private territory, several buildings, a sauna, a swimming pool. All that was missing was a golf course. There were a bunch of expensive cars parked in the parking lot, so the Mercedes that we arrived in looked like a poor relative. The party had obviously been going on for more than an hour, and perhaps even a day. The escort secretly told us that the bride was the daughter of the regional governor. They took us to the central building. Along the way, we saw fireworks being launched here and there. Some music was blaring from boomboxes. Couples were making out on the benches. We entered the main building. I had never seen such a grandeur before. The long tables were piled high with all sorts of appetizers. There was a whole baked sturgeon, and a multitude of piglets, and tubs of caviar the size of a good basin. On the fruit tables, along with pineapples and mangoes, lay things I had never seen even in pictures. Pyramids of champagne were piled high, and lovers of local color were treated to mead, straight from a ladle, by a fellow dressed in a kaftan. Everything was decorated in Russian folk style, as shown in Soviet fairy tale films. Snow-white linen tablecloths with embroidery, waiters in blue trousers and high boots, bunches of bagels, shiny pot-bellied samovars. Judging by the way the guests were sipping from them, there was vodka in the samovars. Our guides told us not to deny ourselves anything, and when necessary, we would be called to perform. Of course, we did not deny ourselves. While we were destroying all sorts of delicacies, I watched the respectable audience. Who wasn't there? Guys with obvious criminal appearances, with bull necks, never letting go of their cell phones. Fidgety snot-nosed men with fingers blue from tattoos. A group of fat men in ill-fitting suits, clearly businessmen or civil servants. A pompous gentleman with a deputy's badge. Several dead-drunk cops who had not even taken off their uniforms. A monumentally large bearded priest. There were women too. From haughty geese in tasteless beads to pretty secretaries in short skirts and the inevitable boyars, clearly recruited from an escort salon. All of this was eating, drinking like brothers, hugging, taking pictures, exchanging business cards, swearing eternal friendship, and then right behind each other's backs, they were throwing slop at each other, discussing who slept with whom, who stole how much, and who was on whose payroll. This swirling bacchanalia, or perhaps the excessive eating and drinking, made me feel sick. There was nothing for my gaze to rest on. I looked here and there, and I finally saw her. She was beautiful, tall, tanned, black-haired, without a drop of makeup. In the simplest dress, stylized as a village dress. She held herself in such a way that it was clear, neither an expensive secretary, nor a cheap-kept woman. On her own. She looked at those around her the same way I did, tiredly, contemptuously, and mockingly. It was these looks that caught us. She smiled and winked. One of the guides seemed to appear out of the ground next to me. He familiarly placed his hand on my shoulder. "What, do you like her?" he asked, and clicked his tongue. "I understand. Not just any chick, the groom's sister, by the way, not married." He chuckled meaningfully. "And the groom, who is he?" I asked. The guide pointed a thick finger in the direction where the guests were just beginning to part. A stunning couple appeared in the empty space. He was in a black suit, dark-skinned. She was pale but beautiful, in a white dress with a white fur cape. She looked unhappy. I realized who she reminded me of. This is what the heroin addicts I knew looked like. They had not yet completely lost their beauty, but they had already realized that there was no way back. "It's time for music," shouted a cartoonish fat man, apparently a toastmaster. We climbed up the platform and started playing. Everything around us started dancing madly. It seemed like no one cared what or who they were dancing with. The priest danced with a prostitute, the thief with a cop. Bulls and businessmen stomped heavily. A deputy threw his knees up. It seemed like they liked our music, or they didn't care what they danced to. My gaze caught the face of a dark-skinned brunette in the crowd again. She wasn't dancing. She met my eyes, finished her glass of champagne, casually threw it on the floor, and walked toward me. "Shall we dance?" I mumbled something about having to work. She laughed, said that my friends would manage without me, grabbed my hand, and pulled me into the hall. My friends looked at me enviously, but understandingly. They really could have managed on their own. We danced to several songs. My new acquaintance moved beautifully, dexterous, graceful. It seemed that she knew no fatigue. I involuntarily recalled the saying that what a person is like in dance, so is she in bed. To be honest, I wasn't very good at dancing. My partner was not embarrassed by this. I was also very tired, and she, it seemed, did not even break a sweat. In the process, I managed to find out that she was indeed single, that this was extremely burdensome for her, and that young, talented musicians were exactly her taste. Eventually, she pulled me towards the exit. My self-esteem was saved. She admitted that she was tired and suggested that we go for some fresh air. We went out into the fresh air, grabbing a bottle of champagne. After long, passionate kisses that smelled of expensive sparkling wine, she suggested not to return to the banquet hall. Of course, it was chilly outside, but there was a sauna. I, drunk on champagne and her company, agreed. We passed the hall there. Judging by the sounds, my friends had stopped playing, and the drunk guests were yelling something at the karaoke. The bathhouse was already heated. Surprisingly, there was no one there except for us. In the hallway, we first took off our shoes, and then our outerwear. Under her dress, my companion had on a long white garment, something like a nightgown. Taking a bath with a new stranger, she said, is not something to be taken lightly. In many ways, it is a ritual comparable in seriousness to a wedding. And if I really want the banquet to continue, then as a gentleman, I must play along, and observe all propriety. After all, she was determined to marry me, and her future husband has no right to be an ill-mannered blockhead. There was no escape. After all, it is true that the rich have their quirks. I threw off my clothes. My companion pulled out from somewhere a white button-down shirt just like hers. I began to pull it over my head, and then I felt a sharp pain. Something wet trickled down my neck. I closed my eyes and cursed heartily, also mentioning God and all his saints. When I opened my eyes, there was darkness all around, only slightly illuminated by the light of the October moon. I stood naked on a stool in an abandoned building. In my hands was a noose, tightly tied to a ceiling beam. It was placed around my neck. I was saved by an earring, a tiny cross that the rope caught on. I reached the highway only in the early morning. The abandoned boarding house was deep in the forest, and I got lost for quite a while. I did not find any trace of yesterday's celebration. I was picked up by a talkative driver who spent the entire journey swearing at the government, especially the local governor. I didn't listen. I felt too woozy. My memories of the party did not feel real. My friends disappeared without a trace. I don't know whatever happened to them. I wonder if they did the same thing to them, made them their playthings. I don't know what actually happened that night. I don't know what they drugged me with, and I don't know what they did to me. Be 2007 or 2008. Forgot the exact time, but late 2007, early 2008. Friends go exploring away in bumfuck nowhere around eastern Oregon. Get lost in woods for hours. GPS is not working right after about the first 2 hours of hiking. Getting dark. Hearing animals in the woods, coyotes and other large game. Pull out SIG 9mm. Walk out into a clearing, hoping it's the road. No road. Just a large clearing with a small, slightly beat up ranch house and a light on in the front room. Run up the door. Start knocking. One friend points out this could be a couple of old rednecks with a moonshine operation running. Holster gun and pull jacket over it. Keep knocking. Nothing. Door is slightly ajar. Push it open slowly. Call out. Hello? Anyone home? We have been lost in the woods all day and were wondering if you could point us to the road. Hear nothing. Hello? We're coming in. Push door open. 3 of us are in your doorway. Anyone here? We walk in. The air just feels thin and creepy. I pull out my gun and start clearing the room with the light on. Really nothing in the room. A little stool and lamp sitting on it. It's an oil-burning lamp, an old rotten couch. Go back into hallway and enter next room. Hear a friend just scream bloody murder. Run back into hallway and into the room. He is now standing with gun drawn and ready to go. See a very dry, very old corpse hanging in the center of the room. It's nearly completely bone at this point. No clothes, and can't tell if it's a man or a woman. Put gun away, looking around room. See a pantry that is just slightly open and hear a light noise like breathing. Pull gun, round chambered. Motion to friend to open the pantry. He slowly walks up and flings the door open. A man's body, covered in flies and bugs, shotgun in hand, his head just covering the wall, not nearly as decomposed. Nope the fuck out and run away as fast as we can. Look back. See figure in front of the light before it goes dead. Nope.png, .avi, .jpeg, .gif. Whip out GPS and check where we are. Shit is all kinda fucked. Screen keeps flashing on and off where we are, but the lat and long are both 00. Shit fuck shit. We are ripping through the woods. Stop and catch breath. Look at GPS again. See our location, but it is still blinking back to another one, marked 00. We start walking back to our car we had saved in the GPS, all while it's blinking back to our previous location. Still have the heebie-jeebies. Finally back to car. GPS is still flipping shit. Get in car. Friend is holding GPS and says it's blinking to around the car, but like 16 feet off. See light in the woods suddenly. Light flies toward us. Oil lamp smashes on front of car. Nope. Rip that shit into reverse and drive like a bat out of hell out of there. GPS still blinking to behind us. After we get about 30 miles away, the GPS goes back to normal. Never told anyone about it. Never talked about it again. Seriously, like the most terrifying thing ever to happen to me. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Those were the wild 90s. The city was plagued by rampant crime, gang warfare, soaring unemployment, and constant layoffs. The country's instability drove many of our fellow citizens to despair, with a rising number of suicides and domestic murders. Everyone just tried to survive however they could. My mother's colleague, let's call her Larissa, was hustling hard to feed her family. She juggled several jobs and often came home late. The route home for the exhausted woman cut through the city's most dangerous and rundown neighborhood, the Klacha or Klemchevsky micro-district. Streetlights were a rarity there, and even in broad daylight, you could easily run into a drug addict or a violent drunk. Larissa's husband did not always meet her because he too worked late. That ill-fated summer evening, it was cold and raining. It was late, and the Nag district was plunged in darkness. Without an umbrella, Larissa was soaked, splashing through puddles, hurrying home because her son and her daughter were waiting. She was rushing to cross the street and escape the dark, eerie area, when suddenly she heard footsteps behind her, fast approaching. Looking back, she barely made out two men's silhouettes in the shadows, closing in quickly. Panic surged through her as she quickened her pace. To her horror, the men started shouting crude, drunken obscenities. From their slurred voices, she knew they were drunk. Then Larissa broke into a full sprint, unable to see clearly where she was going. The footsteps grew louder behind her. She darted into an alley and spotted a nearby old, abandoned house, gloomy and foreboding. From what she later told me, she knew that this was the end. She was exhausted, and they were about to catch her. Then, in an instant, a thought flashed through her mind. God. She didn't have time to pray, only a silent, desperate cry. God. Suddenly, in one of the house's entrances, dark and seemingly deserted, a faint light flickered. Larissa rushed in and heard the men pounding on the street outside. The entrance was shadowy, with a weak glow spilling from the door to a bomb shelter right there. Without thinking, she grasped the door handle and gently pulled it open, careful not to make a sound. The door yielded easily, no creak. She slipped inside and slammed the door behind her, then listened to the rain pattering outside. The men were searching the building, shouting drunken curses, barely audible over the storm. Suddenly, their voices drew closer, and at that moment, the light inside the shelter went out. Larissa realized that the only thing between her and her pursuers was the shelter door. Then a calm, quiet voice whispered behind her, "Don't be afraid. Hold the door tight." Clinging to the door with all of her strength, Larissa pulled it shut and tried not to breathe. Someone on the other side yanked at it, trying to force it open. She heard muffled curses through the pounding of her own heart. Locked, the bitch got away. What the hell are we going to feed the dogs now? These words made Larissa nearly scream. The men smoked, swore, and finally left. Only an hour later did she crawl out of the shelter. She swears her guardian angel saved her. There was no other explanation. It wasn't scary or dark inside. She felt a confusing presence nearby and was moved to tears by gratitude. Larissa got home by morning, wet, filthy, and shaken. When she recovered, she told her husband everything. Eventually, her co-workers, including my mother, found out. The abandoned house with the bomb shelter was soon torn down. It happened to my mom's friend a couple of years back. She was driving on the highway in the middle of nowhere, as in, far away from any town. Suddenly, a car that is passing on her left steers fully to the right in front of her, causing her to brake and steer very rashly. This obviously causes her to lose control and crash against a tree. She passed out, and sometime later, she could not really tell how much time passed. A group of Brazilians, all of this happened in Portugal, came to her rescue and told her things like, "Don't move, we're calling an ambulance, just hang in there," etc. She eventually passes out again, and about 2 hours later, someone else comes and starts helping her again, and eventually, the ambulance and her husband arrive. She tells them that some other people have been there before, but the guy that found her says that no one was there. When they checked the trunk, everything had been stolen, including computer, camera, etc. She later said that she remembers thinking the car that made her crash had been following her for a while and driving a little too close. Make of that what you want. Ozark guy here. Got trapped in a fucked up cave once. Story follows. Be me, 10ish. Mom, sister, and I used to go hiking a lot. There is a relatively accessible cave network a few miles south of us. Lots of different caves, from big open ones to what are essentially crawl spaces or wormholes where you have to army crawl and exhale to make yourself smaller. As a brief aside, if you are the kind of insane fucker that goes through wormholes and squeezes, you should thank God every single time you step out of a cave. I'd never even go near that shit, let alone any cave after what we went through. Anyways, can't remember the name of this specific cave. The entrance is a rock propped up against a wall nearby, I guess to keep black bears and snakes and shit out overnight. We have our shih tzu, Lucy, with us. Mom does not want to carry her ass, so tie her leash to a stand outside the cave. A couple spelunkers are leaving the cave as we go in and chat with my mom. This isn't really a beginner cave. You and your kids will have an easier time just hiking. Mom says fuck that. We came to a cave network to go in caves. Suit yourself. We get into the cave and turn our lights on. Wow, it's made of rock and it's wet. I spend the whole time looking for cave paintings and dinosaur bones because I'm stupid. Sister is always fucking with me, trying to convince me there is a bear in there who has not eaten, shit like that. Shut the fuck up, dude. Bears are cool. Maybe 10 minutes go by and we are a few chambers in. The only way to go further in is a squeeze, like 9 inches tall, pretty wide. The sheet of rock above it has a crack, separating it from the main cave, but there are some metal supports or some shit. It's hard to remember. Looks like it was designed to crush people. Fuck that. Sister starts freaking out, saying she heard something. Pretty sure I heard it too, but assumed it was her trying to fuck with me again. You're stupid. I'm not falling for it. Mom tells us both to shut up. Silence for a little bit. Hear something coming from deeper in the cave. Can't make it out, but my sister and I flip our shit. Mom says it's probably just the wind at the other end of the cave. We decide it's time to leave, because we can't go any further. Start heading back out. Pretty easy. There is a couple spots you have to climb up and drop down, but nothing that requires any real athleticism. Get to where the entrance should be. The rock fell over it, or it was pushed. Either way, we're sealed in. Mom tries pushing the rock, but she is too short to have any real leverage. We try yelling, but not even Lucy is barking at the noise, and she is pretty close to the entrance. Batteries on flashlights pretty low, but Mom packs spares. She says we shouldn't use them yet, unless we need them. Wait around for a while, yelling sometimes, trying different ways of pushing the rock. Mom decides it's time to try heading for the other end of the cave. We make our way there, trying to use the flashlight only when necessary. Mom ends up falling down a 3 or 4 foot drop. I fall with her. Not too bad, but scary. We make it back to the squeeze. Mom is kind of overweight and she can't fit. I am too young to be trusted to find my way through, I guess. Tells my sister to get to the other end of the cave and find someone who can lift the rock. Sister is 13 and she is freaking the fuck out, but she is a champ. She takes the flashlight and makes her way in. Mom and sister are talking to each other through the squeeze, figuring the whole thing out, I guess. Sister stops replying after a little while. Mom hysterical, trying to call to sister, but trying not to be too loud and cause a collapse or something. Eventually, she's quiet, listening for a response. I think she's crying too. We hear rocks moving from the other end of the chamber. People calling, anyone in here? See flashlights, fuck yes. The same cavers who we met on the way in were leaving for the day and noticed our dog still tied up, and the rock over the entrance, and put 2 and 2 together. Mom explains that sister is looking for the other end of the cave. Dude pushes past us immediately and climbs through the squeeze. We watch his feet disappear, and his buddy explains that the cave does not have another end. It's about 1.5 miles long, and there is a lot of really tight interconnected tunnels. It's basically a maze past the squeeze, and most of it has not been fully explored. Mom loses her shit and starts yelling to the guy who went in after sister. Guy with us grabs her and tells her to stop, like she's gonna cause a collapse and we just have to wait. I don't remember a lot of the waiting. Mom and this guy talk for a while, and he tells us stories about the other caves and all of the crazy shit he and his buddy do. Seems like a really cool guy, honestly. Eventually, we hear voices from the other side. Sister is crawling towards us. Dude is crawling behind her, telling her, "It's gonna be okay, we're almost there." She meets us, and my mom rips her out of the crack and squeezes her, all the while saying, "I'm here, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Dude comes out shortly after and says my sister was unconscious. She must have hit her head. Sister isn't talking, she's just staring at the flashlight. We make our way out of the cave. Dog is happy to see us. Mom makes a joke about Enchino Man, which I am way too young to get at the time. Sister is covered in scratches and has a gnarly bruise on her arm. On the drive to the urgent care, my sister whispers that she did not hit her head. She leans in really close and says, "It grabbed me." I tried to get her to explain, but she won't. Nurse says there aren't any signs of an obvious concussion, and she can't find any bumps on sister's head. Just treat it like a concussion and keep an eye on her. For anyone pissed that it's a long story and not much happens, I'm sorry. I figure this is much better than family of 3 found dead in a local cave system. At least, for me it is. It took my sister 3 months to really start talking all that much again, even with therapy, which I didn't think really made a difference. And to this day, she still won't talk to me or anybody else about it. I've tried talking to my mom about it, and she just acts like it was that crazy time that we got trapped in a cave. She even talks about wanting to go spelunking again someday. Just her and my stepdad. Fuck that. Not me. This story did not happen to me personally, but I trust the guy who told it. It happened while he was serving in the army. He told me all about it around 5 years ago, when he was drunk. I will try to retell it as accurately as I can, though I might miss a few details. I never served myself, and I don't know all of the military terms, so I will just retell it in my own words. This acquaintance of mine served on the border with China. According to him, it was the middle of nowhere, just forest and the Amur River. On the other side of the river, you could see China. He often pulled guard duty at various posts. A typical post had a booth where the senior guard stayed, and a tower where the younger soldiers, the so-called greenhorns, usually stood. Inside the booth there was some kind of equipment. From what I understood, parts of the border were rigged with motion sensors. If anything moved, the signal would go to the booth and also to the main unit. There was also a surveillance camera mounted on the tower, pointed toward the border. So, one night, my friend was on duty, up on the tower. It was quiet and dark. The senior guard stayed in the booth and didn't even step out for a smoke. My friend figured the guy was asleep. He decided to get a little rest himself. He said that by that time, he had already learned how to sleep standing up. Luckily, it was summer. Just as he was about to doze off, the senior guard suddenly burst out of the booth. He said that there was movement near the post. The unit had picked it up too. They assumed it was probably just an animal, but since it was so close, only about 5 meters away. They had to check. The senior guard called my friend down and told him to take a look in the forest. My friend climbed down and went to check it out. The senior guard stayed at the post and watched, but they didn't have to go far. A man stepped out of the woods. He was wearing a uniform that looked like a NATO-style digital camo, but he had no head. That is what my friend said. The body was standing there. You could see the uniform. You could see the bare neck, but no head. In the dark, it wasn't clear if it was just a stump or what. It was just gone. My friend froze. The senior guard yelled, "Stop, I will shoot." And then the headless guy crossed his arms over his chest and fell backward, like a diver, disappearing behind the trees. And just like that, he was gone. They ran over to the spot where he fell, but there was nothing there. They grabbed the flashlights and searched the area again, but found nothing. Later, back at the unit, they filed a report saying that there had been a border breach by an unidentified individual. The officers decided to check the footage from the post camera, but the headless man was not on it. You could clearly see the soldiers and what they were doing, but no one else appeared on the video. That is the story. Sorry if it's a little all over the place.